Okay, welcome back. This is section 4.3, and this is a section over going from percent notation to fraction notation. So in between percent notation and fraction notation, we have a decimal. Okay, so in between the two, we have decimal notation. So we kind of have to do what we learned in the last section and apply that now to incorporate both. All right, so what we want you to do is we want you to be able to go from fraction notation into percent notation, and then vice versa, going from percent notation back to fraction notation. All right, so converting from fraction notation to percent notation, all right, let's go over here. All right, so if I have 1/6 and I want to find the percent notation for this, what I would do is I need to do the division, okay? Remember that when you have a fraction, 1/6, you're really doing 1 divided by 6. So if I take 1 and divide it by 6, that's going to give me, so let's just do that. 1 divided by 6 is equal to 0.166 repeating, okay? And so we have this, this very, very, this decimal is just going to keep repeating with 6s, okay? So what I want to do now is then take this decimal and move it 2 units to the right, okay, to go from a decimal to a percent, all right? And so what I end up getting here is I end up getting 16.6 repeating percent, okay? And 0.6 repeating is the same thing as 2/3. So this answer would be totally acceptable, but if you really wanted to write your answer as a correct number, we would do 16 2/3%, okay? So either one of these is fine, but this one you can stop here if you want to, all right? Either one is okay, all right? Now, let's go ahead and it says, the first language of approximately 3/16 of the world's population is Chinese. Find the percent notation for 3/16. So same thing, okay? I'm going to take 3/16 and I'm going to divide those two numbers, okay? So if I do 3 divided by 16, that's going to give me a value of 0.1875, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my decimal here, I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the right, okay? So as a result, what happens is my percent is 18.75%, okay? And you can stop here, okay? That's totally acceptable. But you can write this as a mixed number if you want, okay? You can write it as 18 3/4, because 3/4 is the same thing as 0.75, okay? But feel free to just stop here. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Find the percent notation for 17/20. Now this one's a little bit interesting, okay? And the reason why is because 20, I can multiply this number by 5 to get 100, okay? So we could go through it the same way that we did these two, okay? But what I want to do is this. Okay, if I have the number 17/20, all right, I can turn 20 into 20 into 100 by multiplying it by 5, okay? And I could also multiply this top part by 5 as well. So if I multiply this across, okay, 20 times 5 is going to give me 100, and then 17 times 5 is going to give me 85. Now, by definition, this is what we have as a percent, okay? 85 over 100 is the same thing as saying 85%, okay? If you go back from that last lesson and you think about what we had from our, your grade, we went from 85% to 85 over 100. So you can go both ways, okay? So if you get a fraction of 85 over 100, you can automatically just convert it to 85%. Now, if I went and did the other way and just did 17 divided by 20, okay, and did that in the calculator, that would give me 0.85 as a decimal. And then I would just simply move my decimal place over 2 places, and that would give me 85%. Okay? So if you recognize that you can do that with those numbers, then go ahead and do that. That might be a little bit easier for you, but if you like to just divide those out, get a decimal, and move the decimal place, then go ahead and do that. Same thing. All right. Let's do one more. Okay, and I can do the same thing here. 25, let me write it down over here. 18 over 25. Okay, I could take 25 and I could multiply that by 4 to get 100. Okay, I would need to do the same thing up here in my numerator to keep it balanced. And so if I did 18 times 4, that would give me 72. Now if I have 72 over 100, that's going to give me 72%. Okay, and then if I take, if I did it the other way, okay, I would just do 18 divided by 25, and that would give me 0.72. Okay, move that decimal place over 2 spots, and that just gives you 72%, and that's it. All right? So not too bad, okay? But now let's talk about going from a percent notation into a fraction. So let's take 75% and turn this into a fraction. All right, so what I have, if I take 75%, all right, really what that means is that I have 75 out of 100. Okay, now I have to simplify these fractions. Okay, so 75 and 100, I could divide each of these by 25. Okay, we have a common factor of 25, so each are divisible by 25. And so 75 divided by 25 is going to give me 3. And then 100 divided by 25 is going to give me 4. So my fraction in simplest terms for 75% is 3/4. So the step that we want to do is we want to convert this into a number over 100 and then simplify that fraction. Okay, let's take a look at another one. So let's find the fraction notation for 62.5%. So I'm going to do 62.5%. Okay, as a fraction, I would write that as 62.5 divided by 100. Now the issue is that I don't want to have a decimal inside of my fraction. So what I can do to move that decimal over one space is I can multiply the top by 10 and the bottom by 10. So if I take 62.5 and multiply it by 10, that's going to give me 625. And then if I do 100 times 10, that's going to give me 1,000. Okay, so now the question is how do I, what common numbers will I be able to divide out of this? And so what I know will work at least is going to be 25. All right, so if I divide each of these by 25, 625 divided by 25 is going to give me 25. All right, so I'm going to get 25 out of this. If I do 1,000 divided by 25, that's going to give me 40. Okay, now what I can also do here is I notice that each of these have, I can divide out of 5 out of each of these numbers. So if I can continue this, if I don't get down to simplest terms, then I can just keep dividing numbers and see what we get. So 25 divided by 5 is going to give me 5. 40 divided by 5 is going to give me 8. Okay? And the way to check this, all right, so now let's move on to a mixed number. Okay, find the fraction notation for 16 2/3. Okay, so if I take this number here, let's turn this into a mixed fraction. So I've got 3 times 16, which is 48, plus 2 gives me 50. So I've got 50 thirds. And then what I want to do is take that and take this number. This is 50 thirds percent. And what I want to do is I want to put that over 100. So I've got 50 thirds being divided by 100. Okay, now remember what I said about rewriting things. What I can do, not 50 over 30. So what I can do here, instead of writing that all over 100, I can rewrite this as 50 thirds over 1 times 1 over 100. Okay? Now this is where it gets really weird. Okay? 50 thirds divided by 1 is just going to give me 50 thirds times 1 over 100. So it's weird when I have this fraction in my numerator up here. A fraction divided by a number, okay, is tricky. But the trick is you take your numerator, 50 thirds, and you can multiply it by 1 over 100. And when we do that, we can just multiply across, all right? So 3 times 100, 50 times 1, and this is going to give me 50 over 300. Okay? If I take that and I divide each of these by 50, then that's going to give me a value of 1/6. And that's the idea. And if you think about it, remember we had 16 2/3, that was 1/6? That very, very first problem that we had was 1/6, and we converted that back into 16 2/3%. So that's the idea. So these problems they're pretty simple, okay? For the most part, they can get a little tricky when you get to these mixed fractions, so just be careful. And go back, watch the videos, make sure you're doing the same steps that I did here to get to that answer. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.